start. If you guys don't know me, my name is Becca Snell, and I'm the program and outreach coordinator here at the Chapman. And we are so grateful to have yet again a full house. Always nice to fill the room with our programs. So just a little background for how the idea for this presentation came to be. We kind of got the museum, we have weekly staff meetings, and it kind of came to our attention that next year, 2026, is going to be the America 250 event, where we are celebrating, the 250th anniversary of the United States. And we realized that a lot of people are probably going to, with history kind of on the brain because of that, they're going to want to start digging into their own family histories and figuring out, what my grandfather was like or what my mom's family was like. And no better person to do that than our very own Tisha Dolton. So Tisha is a public historian and librarian at the Folklife Center in Crandall Library. She also serves as a trustee of the Warren County Historical Society and is a member of the Warren, New York 250 Commission. And then in tonight's presentation, she's going to provide you with some of the resources and that are available to you from Crandall Public Library or the Folklife Center, as well as how to access digital resources, and then probably some tips and tricks on how to navigate the records that you do come across. All right, then I will hand it over.
Well, thank you for coming. Literally just finished this presentation this afternoon because I'm a horrible procrastinator. So I'm a public historian, not a genealogist. So I come at genealogy from a slightly different area. I'm less focused on lineage and who had what baby and when they died and everything like that. I'm more focused on like the stories and what makes people interesting. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, but you'll definitely, if you're just a straight up like Joe Smith was born on such and such a date, buried here, they got married, blah, 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 and you just want to do that to get into DAR, Mayflower Society, what have you, you can learn something here as well. So this is me. I'm a public historian, librarian at the Folklife Center. My email, my phone number, it's also on the website, so we will see that as well. So the Folklife Center is in the basement of Crandall Public Library. If you haven't been there, I know some of you have, like Bob and Andrea, lots of times. We're next to the community room. We have a special collection, so we have books that don't circulate on a range of topics, local history, genealogy, obviously. We have a lot of, because the head of the Folklife Center, Todd DeGarma, my boss, is a folklorist. So we have a lot of folk art related things, folklore, ghost stories, music. We do a lot of music programs, that sort of thing. And I'll get into some of the other kind of things that we have specifically as they might relate to a genealogy family history search. So here we have kind of the typical things you might be thinking of. We have published and unpublished family histories. So these are histories that either amateur or professional genealogists have put together related to a very specific family line. So you can see Schuyler genealogy, and we have different things. We have a bunch of, Harris is a big family in the area, so we have a lot of Harris genealogy. Then we also have a lot of published records, some of which are available. They've been digitized, so some of them are on Ancestry, some of them are completely different. We'll get to Family Search, which might have some of these on them as well, because Family Search does have books. But we have a lot of things, so if you still don't really like the whole computer thing or still can't find it, we do have people who still come in and use the paper copies. But the Shifts Manifest, immigration records, church records, which you'll see here. These are all of our a lot of our local churches. So we'll have some of the birth, marriage, and death records, some of the Catholic ones. We have baptism records. And then over here we have local cemetery records. So they're not the originals, they're printouts of like listings. So it's mostly what you can need to get started. And find out where they're located, and then go to someplace like, you actually go to the cemetery or go someplace like Find a Grave. And We do get donations, but we have a significant budget to purchase said items. City directories and phone books. I know the Chapman also has city directories, so some things they also have, which we have. We have a full set of the Glens Falls city directory, which includes South Glens Falls and Hudson Falls and Fort Edward in most of them. We also have a small section of Saratoga Springs city directories that we got recently. And those are kind of spotty depending on who published them, whether they also include, say, Ballston Spa or Mechanicsville or something like that, but they almost always include at least Saratoga Springs. Phone books. You all look like you remember phone books. So we do use phone books quite a bit. Obviously, they go up a little more up to date. These here on the bottom, those are also like street kind of guides, similar to what a city directory would be, but they're a little more reference oriented. And we have people who use those all the time, but our most recent one of that, I think, is 2023. So we do have people who do more modern kind of stuff. We have a whole section of bank of regional files, and then specifically Glens Falls. So like the first 4 of those are all regional. So Adirondacks, South Glens Falls, Fort Edward, Hudson Falls, different counties kind of stuff. It's mostly what we would either consider ephemera, so like flyers of businesses and festivals that have happened, programs of concerts and things like that. Nothing that's been published. Maybe a little bit of business records or something like that. And the LARAC file, which I just reorganized because it had gotten to be a monstrosity. It's like half of one of those whole folders. We do have like some early like board minutes and stuff like that, which I should let Phil know we have in case they don't have them. But there's those kind of things, and that goes, you know, fairly modern. We put new things in there all the time. And there's a lot of church stuff in there. Businesses, if they were in the paper or something like that, a lot of times we'll put those in there. And then after that, it starts into Glens Falls and Queensbury. So specifically Glens Falls and Queensbury is in a separate section. And then past that is another section of files, which we'll get to in a second. We have quite a few regional yearbooks. Mostly the most significant runs we have are obviously Glens Falls, South Glens Falls, Queensbury, St. Mary's. We do have quite a few of Hartford because our previous archivist was from Hartford. And we have a decent amount from like the teens and 20s of Glens Falls Academy. And then we're kind of spotty on some of the other local high schools. Yep. The Crown. Most of the yearbooks go back to like say the 40s and the 30s. They didn't really do yearbooks before that. Oops. Where are we going? There we go. Okay, so this is the other section. This is the biographical files, and I gave you an idea of kind of what's in there. The little orange file, when you when you take one of the little files out, you just stick that in there, and then you go, you know, read it, and then you put it back on our little cart, and then we kind of know where it goes back. But so these are all arranged by a surname. So these are kind of things that we've researched ourselves. Some of them are part of the folks who originally started the library's local history section was named Miller. So some of them are from the Miller collection. So you'll see, if you come in, you'll see a lot of Miller notations. They were on these little cards and they're written really kind of small. So sometimes they're a little hard to read. But there's a lot of obituaries in there. There's random articles that we found, you know, different kind of things. You can see the name Hughes up there. So Charles Evans Hughes, we have a pretty big amount of stuff on him. So we had to separate his family out from all the other Hugheses because otherwise people with the last name Hughes are just kind of digging through all the Charles Evans Hughes stuff. So sometimes we do separate somebody like that who's going to have a big chunk of stuff and make that a separate section. Something some people might not think of when they're thinking of genealogy is to look in your local history section, the actual history books that have been published, because sometimes they're going to mention those people. So if they have an index, you can look through those, look for the people that you're looking for. I just pulled out the Dewey Decimal numbers. So Saratoga County is going to be 974.498. And then Washington County is 974.494. Warren County is 974.751. And then biography, autobiography, and memoir is going to be in 92. So like if you were looking for other states, other counties, basically what the 974 is local history, United States. So after the decimal point is going to break out into region, then it's going to break into state, and that's going to break into county. So yeah, so you can see 9 is history and geography, 97 is history in North America, 974 northeastern New York, New England, Middle Atlantic states. And then if you scroll down, you'll see the further breakout. So you have New York 0.7, and then Northern County is 0.75, and that's where Warren County is going to be. You notice that Saratoga and Washington County were 0.74 because they're the Middle East counties. I don't know what that means, but that's the way they were. That's the way Melville Dewey broke them out. So that's what we're starting with. So then you can see, like, if you were looking for Jefferson County, you'd want to go to 0.757. And if you wanted to check, other spots of the state, you could do the same kind of thing. And then other states. So, there we go. And we also have, she was actually here today. We have genealogy classes once a month. It's not really a class. Sometimes we do have classes, but we call it one-to-one because our volunteer genealogists, Judith and Lisa, they alternate months. Like Judith was here today, so she'll just come and set up, and then she will basically tackle whatever issue you are having. If you've never done genealogy before, she'll start with the basics. If you have a specific problem that you're trying to get through, if you have, like, you've hit a dead end with like ship's manifests, or we had a gentleman today who had done his DNA test and found out he had a sister he didn't know about, so he was asking about that. So you get kind of those questions too. We had another lady who has kind of a famous ancestor, and she's got a lot of, like newspaper articles and stuff like that, but she's trying to fill in the other gaps and trying to figure out things you can't do with Google. Once again, it's the third Wednesday of the month in the Folklife Center from 10 to noon.
You have to sign up for that?
Nope. You just walk in. Yep. Yeah, we had 4 people today, and she spends about a half an hour with each person and goes that way.
You have access to newspapers.com?
Yep, we'll get there. That's all right. We're almost there. So digital resources you could use in the library. So you can't use these from home. Ancestry Library Edition. So if you have your own Ancestry account, if you have the free Ancestry account, Ancestry Library will get you more access to things, but they won't get you full access. Like if you pay for the however much subscription, you don't need Ancestry Library because you're going to get everything that we can't get to. But this way you can get a little bit more than what you can just get with the free edition. You can use it. You don't have to sign in. If you want to sign in, you can. Just make sure you sign out when you leave. It's available on any of the library desktops, so you can use them in the computer room on the first floor, which has a 2-hour time limit. Or if you think you're going to be there for longer than 2 hours, you want to come downstairs to Folklife, you can use it for longer. Most people tend to think 2 hours of genealogy a day is sufficient because they get frustrated, but yeah, you can use that in the library and you can check it out. Another thing that's nice about it is if you have the free edition and you're trying to figure out if it's worth it for you to maybe pay for either a month or a year or whatever, you can come in and see what else you can find with the library edition. And then it'll show you, like, you can still see like the stuff, but you won't be able to get the picture. So you'll get like a transcript, but it'll say you need to have the edition to view this particular document. Then there's Family Search. Family Search is similar. They have similar things, but some different things. This Family Search has a lot of books you can actually access on it. So it has its own like little library, digital library within it. So it's not just like census records and that sort of thing. So sometimes people will use both of them just because they're slightly different things. Or if you get stuck in what you can access in Ancestry, maybe try Family Search and see if there's something there you can fill in. Both of these do have little tutorials that are actually on our website, and I'll show you how to get to those in a little bit. Newspapers.com. We still have microfilm. We actually started getting the Chronicle digitized or microfilmed. So we still have microfilm. So if you really just want to go in and look at the microfilm, you can. Most of the time people will only use the microfilm if something in newspapers.com is wonky. Sometimes the page won't load and you'll get those little like broken picture images. So sometimes you can go in that way because you've at least found the date and you can kind of search on microfilm. We do have some very limited amount of actual newspapers, typically late 19th century.
On the microfilm, are the photographs clearer than they are like?
Sometimes. They've tried to make because now we have digital microfilm readers. So they've tried to make them so that you can tweak them and like lighten them up and darken them up. If you want to do that, make sure it's a day that Kevin's there, because the microfilm reader likes Kevin, does not like me. Kevin can do so much more with the microfilm reader, and I'm just like, oh, it's jumping around. I hate it. But yeah, so sometimes you can tweak the images so that you can get it, and sometimes you can you can flip it so it's negative to positive. So sometimes that helps a bit too.
Can you make copies?
Yeah. Yep. Newspapers.com. So we have the Poststar archive only, and that's because we basically provided them with a lot of the microfilm, so they give us a subscription to that. So it includes the Morning Star and includes some of the Glens Falls Times, and it's roughly 1883. It says 2025, but 2025 is really more in the news bank section, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But it's keyword search. You can keyword search it. You can break it down by year. If you are looking for someone's name, you want to make sure you put it in quotation marks. So on this one, I was actually looking for information on Mrs. Twitchell, because I wanted to know who Mrs. Twitchell was. Found out her name was Vera, because Mrs. Twitchell really annoys me. I wanted to know what her name was. So that's a thing with me and like women and trying to research women. But this was their son was getting married. She used to run a story time at the library and for about 25 years in the 30s and 40s. And she would have 100 children at her story times. There's a couple of pictures of her in the Look magazine photos. So yeah, you can just clip out whatever section you need, and then you can print it. They wind up printing out like this, and they actually have like the date and everything at the top and what page it's on and everything. So you don't even have to bother with like writing on the sides. The Poststar, Glens Falls, and the year and all that. It comes out right on the top. Yeah, there's more. This is just like an overview again. At the library, the other thing we do have some photograph databases. We have quite a few photographs in the Folklife Center. And some of them we have in a database that you can kind of search. So the Look magazine, Hometown USA photos, particularly anyone who was in the actual articles, we know who those people were because they're referenced in the articles. We've had a couple of different times when people have said, oh, so that's so-and-so, or oh, this is so-and-so. Yeah. So we do know who some of the people are, so you can search by that. You can search because sometimes there was like organization meetings, things like that, churches. So we can search for those kind of things. This is Bernice Quinn.
Can you print from?
No, but you can ask and we'll bring the photos from the back, and you can look at the photos.
Can you take a picture?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Look magazine aren't in copyright because they're from the 40s. So you still have to make sure you're not like, just publishing them willy-nilly.
Oh,
Yeah. Yep. This is Douglas Crockwell and Bernice Quinn. Then the Carl Attia photograph collection. Carl was a photographer with the Post-Star. So we have all of his professional photographs. Some of his nieces and nephews came in and said, I wonder where the family photographs are, because apparently he took just as many family photographs as he did of fires and car accidents, and there's great pictures of the Fort William Henry fire that he took. Baseball, there's lots of sports pictures in that collection, and there's lots of organization meetings, so like Rotary Club and that kind of thing. And those are all arranged. Those are negatives. So some of them are photographs, but a lot of them are negatives. Richard K. Dean photograph collection, a lot of the same kind of organization kind of stuff. Richard M. Bloomer glass plate negative collection. Those are all portraits. He was a photographer in Hudson Falls from 1905 to 1931. They are beautiful portraits. And we have a gentleman who's helping us scan those right now. Those we have quite a few, about 1,000 of them on New York Heritage, which I'll show you in a little bit. The Crandall Library photograph collection is what we call an artificial collection. So these were all created by specific people for specific reasons. The Crandall Library photograph collection is just random photographs we get at different times, and we put them all in the collection. And there's 4,000 photographs in that. So there's 4,000 in Look 4,000 in Look magazine. Carl Attia, I don't know how many are in that collection. Bloomer is around 4,000 also. So we have a lot of photographs. There are other collections also, but I feel like these are kind of the ones that have the most robustness for genealogy research.
Are those collections searchable by names or events or?
Yeah, those are more of a searchable kind of situation. We do have other collections that it's just kind of like a crapshoot. But yeah, but we have a database, and there's a little search bar, and you can search for certain things. Yep. And then what it'll do is say you put in Rotary Club, it'll take 4,000 down to maybe like 200. Yeah. And then you can just kind of scroll through. Some of the databases have images in them, and some of them are just the description. So then you write down what the identifier is and let us know and say, I'm looking for these particular pictures that I want to look at, and then we'll bring them out. We have a little reader that if it's a negative that you can look at them to see. And then if there's ones that you want, we just have Kevin scan them and email them to you. So these are digital resources you can use from home. So you don't even have to come to the library. Sometimes you need a library card though. Fold 3 is Ancestry's military specific kind of stuff. So a lot of this is still available on Ancestry. It's just putting it in one spot. So if you're specifically looking for, say, Revolutionary War pension records or Civil War pension records, things like that. And it has a lot more modern stuff in it as well. like more recent conflicts. But you do have to have a Crandall Public Library card. So if you don't have one, stop into the library and get one. And that has a tutorial on the website too, so you can get more information on how to, they're short, they're like 2 minutes. We have another one called Heritage Quest online. It's similar to a lot of the other ones. That's why I put up this little graphic. So it's something you can access from home if you have a library card, whereas Ancestry, you can't, you have to be in the library for that. Then there's, little things. It doesn't have global coverage. You can't make family trees. You can see census records. You can save your results. You can email your results to yourself. So those are kind of pros and cons to ProQuest. But again, it's one of those things where you can look at it and see if it has something that you need. Otherwise, you might want to shell out the money for Ancestry or come into the library and use our version. So this is more newspaper archives. Newsbank you can access from our library website, and once we get there, I'll walk you through our entire website so you can kind of see where things are. But this has more recent stuff. So in our more modern age, a lot of our newspapers are being published online anyway. So these are going to be text only. So you're not going to be able to get the photographs that appeared with the articles. It's just going to be straight up text. And there's Post-Star, Saratogian, Times Union, and the Daily Gazette. New York Historic Newspapers is a free website that you can access from anywhere. And you can do it a couple of different ways. On the map, you can just click on the county that you want to do. And when you do that, it'll bring up the newspapers that they have from that county and the dates that you'll see. So you'll kind of be able to tell quickly whether you can see if they have the time period that you're looking for. One of the best things for, say, Washington County, if you're searching Washington County, the Greenwich Journal was the only continually active newspaper in Washington County for like 170 years. But it has like a bunch of different names. So sometimes it was the People's Journal, sometimes it was the Greenwich Journal, the Salem Press, sometimes it was the Fort Edward Advisor, the Greenwich Journal, the Greenwich Journal. Yep. I was the Greenwich Town historian. I use it all the time. Then we have Warren County or Saratoga County. But you also want to keep in mind where the big newspapers were going to be for your time period. So by looking at the counties, you can kind of get a better idea as to who was publishing where. And if you don't see something where you're looking, what might be the next nearest place over, because they might be covering that area anyway. And again, that covers the whole state. So if you need to look at Suffolk County, you can. Okay, so New York Heritage is digitized collections from 470 organizations in 56 counties throughout the United States. So we are part of this. We have various different collections on there. I'll show you what ours looks like. It's photographs, postcards, oral history projects. We don't have any oral histories on there, but some places do. We have physical objects on there. Film and video. There's a place out in Buffalo that is putting up all of their old news programs from one of the TV stations out there. There's a lot of ephemera on there, and they even put up online exhibitions. So like for the Women's Suffrage Centennial, they did an online exhibition pulling from a bunch of different collections. I'll pop back here and show you what ours looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like. And then if you go over to organizations, it'll show you a list of all the counties. So you can see all the counties. Whoops. And then if we scroll down to Warren County, there's only 3 of us. Us and the town of Chester. What was the other one? I forget. Oh, ACC. So this is ours, and it gives you a little map, so you can kind of know where it is. There's a brief overview of the organization, and then you get down to the collections. So some of these are going to be more genealogy related than others, like the Amigurumi collection. Probably not going to be very important for your genealogy research, but they're cute little crocheted anthropomorphic animals. The Abby and Will Sabler Lake George collection, that is mainly postcards of up and down Lake George. Arts and artifacts is a lot of paintings and things like that. Bat and Kill Inspired was based on an exhibit that we did a bunch of years ago that then we made a video series of, just like Champlain Canal stories. But some of those might have something that might be of interest if your family was, on the Bat and Kill. Families of Upstate New York is one that we're kind of working on. That's actually part of my family. Folk Arts and Artist Collection. If you have somebody who was an artist, there might be something in there. We have a history of Crandall Public Library. Nell Cunningham collected Indian baskets, which was very common in the early 20th century. So we have that collection. The Hometown USA collection is only some of the colored slides. We haven't really fleshed that collection out. Yep. And then we have our Saga City collection. Our intern Abby is working on that right now. Winfield Designs is coming. Stephen Alcorn prints, that was an exhibit we just had up. Northern Survey Company is an interesting collection. So this company was based out of Albany, I think. Yeah. And they would go around and photograph people's houses. And then they go knock on the door and be like, hey, we took a picture of your house. Will you buy this picture of our house? And sometimes they, if there were people there, they'd round them up and like arrange them out in front of the house. And sometimes there's things written on the back, like, sorry, my husband wasn't home. I can't buy this without his permission, or, different things like that. It didn't want it too expensive. The house looks horrible. There's random things like that on there. But that's kind of interesting. So if you're looking for, most of the people aren't identified, but a lot of the locations are there. So if you had family in, say, Valatia or something, that might come up that there's like something there that you could see. That is an exhibit, yeah. A lot of these stem from exhibits, but not all of them. But here I want to show you the Bloomer collection. So this is the Bloomer collection. So if you folks are from Hudson Falls or Fort Edward, I mean, there are other people who show up. There's a couple of people from Greenwich and Hartford and Argyle who were photographed there too. But we have some historical context. So it gives you kind of an idea about Hudson Falls and about Mr. Bloomer and the photographs he was taking. It tells you roughly the time period and where. And then you can just search the collection. So if there's a family that you know in Hudson Falls, you can just stick their last name and see if it comes up. Or you can just go to Explore Collection. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you get this kind of page, and you can see sometimes we can kind of guess what the time period is. There's none of them are dated per se, but we have been able to figure out who some of the people are because some of them have names attached to them. So we can kind of figure that out. Some of them are in military uniforms. We can kind of roughly estimate that. But these are all the different ones we have. Ooh. And if we know more about them, like this guy right here. So I think this is Robert Dempsey. Yeah. Robert Thomas Dempsey died in 1999. He and his brother are both featured in these photos. And I figured out who his parents were. And then I got more information and graduated from Fordham. enjoy the Navy, become an engineer. And they own Dempsey Block and Steel. Yeah.
Lived on the corner of Glen Street.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of pictures of Robert, and you can see they just stuck the overalls on over the top of his outfit, and his brother over here. Find his brother. Is this his brother? Oh, let's see if I can remember where his brother is. I might have to just, oh, there he is. There he is. So this is Robert's brother. So because we knew when they were, we figured out who they were, we knew they were born. It basically said on the slip, I think it said, yeah, Mrs. Robert Dempsey's child. So that's how we figured out who the kids were. So this is James Richard Dempsey, we believe. As I was doing some of the research, I went into newspapers.com to find obituaries and things like that. And one of his daughters made a documentary about him and his time in World War II, and actually showed it at the library in like the early 2000s before the so you can do research with things like this as well. Resources. You're local historians. New York State is unusual in that by state law, every town, village, city, county is supposed to have a publicly appointed historian. So a lot of them do. Some of them are kind of missing here and there, but they're a great source of information. Our county historian, Stan Cianfrano, is very knowledgeable, and he's also the president of the Warren County Historical Society. Our town historian, John Barry, is also part of the Historical Society. Our city historian, Wayne Wright, is also part of the Historical Society. But you can, if you go to, I'll bring you up. It basically brings up a PDF. So this will take you to the AFNIUS website. And you got a map of the state. They're broken out by regions. So you just pick on your region. So we're region 5. Region 5. Oh, yeah. Okay, so then you pick your county. Warren County. Just because. And here you have a list of all of the most recent municipal historians. And they try to keep this pretty up to date. So there's email addresses. As we scroll over, it'll give you phone numbers also, if there's phone numbers and addresses. S.org. Yeah, it's Association for Public Historians for New York State. Okay. So Mary Hecht was a sculptor from Glens Falls. She graduated from Glens Falls High School in 1948. It's right there. She kind of looks like a friend of mine. So she was in French club, biology club. She was president. She was on the North Star ad staff. That was like their newspaper. She was on the student defense stamp agent, red and black ad staff. So for the yearbook, the senior ball committee, senior play production committee, forum club, gym exhibition. I don't know what that is. She did archery for 3 years. And patrons evening committee, swimming for 2 years, and junior prom committee. And then everybody has these little things underneath, like we used to have senior quotes. This one girl says dreaming and moonlight rides. This boy says firearms and old cars. So I guess it's like things they liked. One guy's like jazz and Louis Armstrong. Hers says flying. And I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. Because she actually took flying classes in high school. So I was able to find this article about student aviation. There's actually a couple articles about her flying. Hmm? Yep. And there's one here about science honors. She's mentioned in that, and a variety program. She was in a skit at one of the local synagogues. So her family was Jewish. And then when she went to college, she studied drawing at the Art Students League in New York City and is spending several weeks with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Arthur J. Hetch, at 10 Pershing Road. Yep. So I did a little more digging. I got the city directory here from 1937, and it mentions Hecht Arthur J., Cecilia B., so his wife. He worked for Northern Standard Specialty Company. And at that time in 1937, they were living, where did it go? 2 Summer Place. I didn't look that up before I came. So I've used newspapers.com. I've looked in the city directories. I've looked in the yearbooks. Here's her sister, Beatrice, right there. Third one down. She graduated in 45. I know. And then over here we have them in 1948. And again, it mentions Arthur and Cecilia, but also mentions Beatrice. So she got mentioned in the city directory after she graduated from high school. She's probably working. And here we have the cemetery printout. So this is the Temple Bethel Cemetery in Moreau, just outside of South Glens Falls. And we have Arthur J. Hecht, died in 1966, and where he's listed. And then notice that you don't see her there because she remarried. And so she married a man named Marks. So she is buried there, but I had to look for her. So I had to find her obituary, try to do some digging there, try to figure out who she was. But luckily because I knew where he was, I went to my trusty old Find a Grave. And luckily the cemetery is nearby and it's not a huge cemetery, so I could have looked there too, but it's on the cemetery stone. So I was able to find her that. So it's on the stone and it was there on Find a Grave. Yes, kind of. It was like its own little like footnote. So I was able to find her, and then so I got both of their obituaries, and then I added their Find a Grave ID number. And then I found her second husband's obituary also, and he's buried in Riverside Funeral Chapel in New York City. So he's not buried up here. What's that? Because she, when you see her sculpture, you might figure she is she's a semi-famous sculptor. But the town of Moreau historian had written a piece. She has no, she's not the town of Moreau historian. She was before. One historian ago. She has a Facebook page that she types out things, and she had typed out something about this, and I was like, I always wondered what that was. So if any of you have been by Temple Bethel Cemetery, you've probably seen this sculpture. It's on her parents' grave, and she made that. So I was like, I always wondered about that. And my daughter and I have always been fascinated every time we drive by it. So I started digging more into finding more about her. And she actually exhibited here in Glens Falls quite a bit. She exhibited at the temple, both temples a couple of times. She exhibited a couple other, where is this one? A gallery called The Gallery on Bay Street. She exhibited in other places, New York City and things. she, 2013. So she had a specific way that she sculpted. Write it out in a way that makes sense. But it's like it has something to do with wax, and then you pour the metal somehow over the wax, and that's why it makes it so that it looks all, you know, crinkly and like it's a complicated process. But and I should have read up on how it's done. But she also made this little sculpture of a Canadian suffragist. When I saw that, I got so excited because I am that much of a dork. But one of the things that makes her especially interesting is she eventually moved to Canada, and she taught in a university in Canada. And she eventually developed dementia. And what they actually did was they actually studied her. So there are quite a few articles about her and how basically about how art was kind of curtailing a lot of the effects of dementia, because she never forgot how to sculpt. She never forgot how to draw. She was always doing that. And it definitely made her happy, and she continued to do fairly well because of that. So there's a bunch of studies that are about that, and she was kind of like a case study for that. But there's some other sculptures. So that's kind of a way to bring life into just like lineage. Hold on. I want to show you some things first. There are kind of, as far as genealogy goes off of the library website, there are kind of 3 spots you can look for. One is the blue digital library tab. One is the red Folklife tag, and the other is just the little search symbol. Most everything in the Folklife Center is on the library catalog. So if you search for something, it should come up. So if you type in randomly somebody's last name, something could possibly come up. And it might be that we have a published genealogy of that family's name. I don't recommend just typing in somebody's last name into the search, because you're also going to bring up every John Grisham book ever written or something like that. But sometimes you'll see things that say realia, and those are objects that we have in the Folklife Center. If it says Holden collection, that's where it is. If you're searching for, say, a book, like I had a couple of months ago, someone was searching for Alice in Wonderland, and came down because we do have a small collection of historic children's books. And she was like, I want to read Alice in Wonderland. And I'm like, you can't check it out. And I was like, you mean we don't have a copy of this book somewhere else? And I realized it was because she searched Alice in Wonderland and not Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So I was able to find her a circulating copy that she could then take out, but not in the Folklife Center. So some of the books we do have, there are circulating copies, either available upstairs in the rest of the library, or at another library that we can then request for you. I just had a gentleman today who came down to grab one of Lawrence Gooley's books, Terror in the Adirondacks, about Robert Garrow. And I was like, well, you can't check that out. I was like, let me see if I can find another copy for you. So I was able to order one for him. So, and he was getting his first library card that day. So that was pretty funny. So he was able to request that. So you can search for things right in the typical search bar. Digital library, if you go down to Learn, that's going to bring up, obviously, a section on genealogy. Journals and newspapers is another good spot. There's lots of other, stuff. So feel free to kind of look around in there. But on the genealogy page, it will bring up all of those little tutorials I was telling you about. So this is how you get access Fold 3. When you do that, you just need to log in with your library card number, and then you can access everything that's there. if you don't have a Crandall Public Library card, you can still come into the library and use it that way. Well, I mean, not everybody can get a Crandall. Most people can, but sometimes you can't. So all you have to do is for the little tutorials is just click on those and it'll play you the tutorials. Starts out with a little introduction about what it is and what it's going to cover, and then it'll teach you, like, if you need to sign in, it'll tell you how to do that, and then it'll tell you how to search different things. And we have one for all 4 of those things. And then if we go back up to learn again, we can go down to journals and newspapers. And this will bring up newspapers.com for the postcards archive. And you can see it says they're available only for use in the library. But then below that, you can see the news bank section. So Post-Star, Saratoga, Times Union, and Daily Gazette. For those of you who are not especially nimble, you do have to hover over each individual one and click on that. I'll click on the Times Union because then you can, oh, nope, Owen needs a library card. So,
You can do that from
yeah, as long as you have a library card. Yeah. I didn't test that one out outside of the library. And then down here, if you forgot everything that I was telling you about, New York Historic Newspapers is also right there. So you can click on that and it'll open. You have to verify that you're a human now. Yes, there are lots of professional genealogists who can help out. So those are a couple of things on the blue tab. You go over to the Folklife Center. We have about the Folklife Center, archives and research, the gallery. That's where we have we do have some online exhibits that are there that were usually they were an exhibit that we had downstairs, and then we also put it online. So there's some past ones on there. Programs and events, our YouTube channel, which has lots of cool stuff. Our docuseries, which are also on the YouTube channel. But we'll go to archives and research. And so this is how you can access a lot of our stuff. So if we go to, where is it? Regional and biographical sections, I was talking about those different files. What this will do is it'll give you a list of what we have. So if you're looking for, if you're at home and you want to see if we have a certain business that you're looking information on, say you're looking for something from Adirondack Machine Corp, you can see we have a vertical file on that. And if we go to the biographical file, which we need to update because it hasn't been updated since 2018 and we've added some to it. But it'll go alphabetical. And this is just a PDF, so you just scroll down through and see like what last names are represented. And there's lots. This is the biographical files.
So if somebody is on there that you should have a file on that,
It means we have a file on that last name.
that last name.
Yeah. So so it could have something in there if you're looking for someone. Then there's the regional one is there also. If you click on one of these, so say family papers, we do have a couple of collections that are specifically genealogy related. You can see Betty Bucknell genealogy collection. And what we can do is we can look at that, we can click on that, and what'll open is the finding aid. So for archives, this is typically the kind of description that you're going to have for what's in the finding aid. So you're going to see this collection includes various materials relating to a local family genealogies. Material includes photographs, newspaper clippings, and usually it'll list the families that are represented in the genealogy listing. So I scroll down. Yeah, here we go. I gotta try to grab that guy. So we have important people, Betty Bucknell, Dorothy Stark Harris, places. And then this is going to break down more what we have. So Allen, Stark, Jillian, Livingston, Barber tend to be the names that are represented there. And then we have other names up here, McGee, Buckland, Frisbee. So that can kind of tell you if that person is going to be, they're going to tell you if they're going to have something that you, that might be interesting to you. But we have other ones. We have the Bergenhart genealogy, Grace Boutino. People use that collection quite a bit. We are open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're open from 9 to noon and 1 to 9. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're open from 9 to noon and 1 to 5. So we actually have pretty good hours for a genealogy, for an archive. Other things under the archives and research, businesses, organizational records. So say we have these big binders from Zonta. So if person you're researching was a member of Zonta, particularly if they were really active and were on the board or something like that, there might be some things in there relating to that. We have some Rotary Club records. We have a lot of AAUW records. We tend to collect things for organizations that don't have a physical building. So if you have a physical building, you can usually house your own stuff. But if you don't have that, then we'll usually take that. Our local DARs have their records there, things like that. And then if you forget everything that's under the blue tab, you can still find it under the genealogy tab or the red tab. Because you got the genealogy workshops, newspapers, and databases that are going to reference it there. And the same thing with the newspaper or with the New York Heritage. It's going to show up there as well. I will say the first thing that any genealogist will say is if you want to actually do a genealogy, start with yourself. Don't start back and go down. Start with you and go up. Yeah, because you'll find way too many holes the other way around. Yeah. Well, no, I mean holes that you can't fill. I mean, like, especially when you hit like say 1820 to 1850, because there's nothing here. There's no newspapers. There's hardly any churches. If they didn't keep good records, there's nothing. So invariably, when somebody calls me and they're like, "I'm looking for blah 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 blah," I'm like, "Oh, what year are you looking for?" They're like 1834, and I'm like, no. Chances are, if you didn't find it, it ain't there. So that's like a big kind of hole, especially in this area. That's a big hole, like the early 1800s. You can find more in like the late 1700s than you can the early 1800s. Yeah, and sometimes you can't find. Sometimes they don't always print obituaries. They didn't always write obituaries. So funeral notices. Sometimes there'll be funeral notices. Sometimes, which doesn't give you a ton, but sometimes they'll at least tell you where. You'll kind of get an idea of what church they might have belonged to, or you'll get an idea at least where they might be buried. So you can kind of like figure it out that way. The other thing is that sometimes you'll get the funeral notices and you can see who the pallbearers were. So sometimes that's helpful because then you can kind of see who they were friends with and what organizations they might have belonged to, depending on who they were friends with.
Well, that